Hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728 and Bella Poarch. Wow. I I looked at a picture of this girl in the thumbnail. She was on H3. I'm like, she looks like she's mixed with maybe she's part black, maybe she's something else. I don't know. So I'm like, maybe I should look at it. I don't know. So I decided that I would just look at it just to get it out of the way, find out who she is. I would just skip through, um, you know, maybe a third in, a third in, a third in, and just get a couple of minutes of understanding what they're talking about. Next thing I know, I'm listening to the whole podcast. It's like an hour and a half long or something like that, where she's going into her entire life, how she was in the Navy, how she was basically abused, um, exploited as a child. But thankfully, at least they didn't bring up anything like sexual abuse or anything like that. But yeah, and so number one, I guess a couple of minutes into the podcast, um, they started talking about build a bitch, her song, and I was like, okay, she has a song, she's a TikToker, okay, let's take it in. I really, really like that song. I'm like, wow, and it has like 195 million views in a month and something. They said it has the record for the highest, um, I guess, number of views for a debut video on YouTube. Of course, that's what records are for. They're always going to be broken. We have more people every day, but um, this song is a nice, catchy tune with a nice meaning behind it. It's direct, and the quality. As somebody, I saw like some reaction videos to it of a singer, a songwriter, and a producer, and they were like, yeah, it has. It's not a cheap video. That's what they were saying, and it isn't. It's just a nice looking video. Wow, I could see why it has so many views. It's just pretty cool. The tune is catchy. It's great, honestly. So then I went back to look at the video. I mean, she's explaining her life, and then she's like, she, number one, was adopted. She lived with her grandmother. I guess it's a biological grandmother. And she was adopted from her grandmother by a Filipino woman and an American guy. And from the age of 6 onwards, she was used for her labor and punished harshly if she did not do what was demanded of her in terms of taking care of all of these livestock that her adopted, she calls him a stepfather, adopted father, had for her to do. And then the worst of it is herself and her youngest sibling, they were the slaves. At least they were allowed to go to school, I suppose. And they were called abusive names, like a gay slur for her brother, and she was called the stupid bee, and well, I guess stupid bitch in English. And wow, she had to get up at 4 o'clock, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning to start doing her chores so that she could be finished before she went to school. If she did not clean up all the feces every day, she wouldn't get to eat breakfast. She might get struck, she might get hit. She said once she went to school with a swollen arm, and the most that happened was the teacher wanted to know why she was writing so slowly that day. And when the teacher saw, and she explained that she had to write with her, I guess her left arm, because her right arm was swollen and bleeding, the teacher was like, well, I guess make the best of it. And And that's it, because there's no child protective services in the Philippines, and there still isn't, she says. But in spite of that, she still loves the Philippines. Anyways, she mentioned the fact that, yeah, the older siblings, they didn't have those chores. They weren't called harsh names. They weren't treated poorly. Um, and from 6 until 14, when she left to go to the U.S., um, she had to go through that. And Ethan is like expressing my thoughts exactly, which is like, jeez, it's just like, wow, what a horror story. Amazingly, um, she did, I guess, as I understand it, she did kind of well at school. Um, in terms of performing, she was in the choir. She won some medals, gold medals, for some of her performances, for sometimes for her singing. So she is a legitimate singer. She knows how to sing because of years of practice, because she was a success at it. And her opportunity to go to the US came about when her adoptive father needed some medical care. I don't know if it was I think it was a heart problem. So being an retired um, military person, he went back to the US for care. And while he was there, they told him he couldn't go back to the Philippines because he wouldn't be able to get the standard of care that he needed. So um, she and her brother were still young enough to um, follow them to the US. The eldest siblings were too old, and they remain up to this day in the Philippines. But of course, her life changed a bit. Her father couldn't be as abusive as he was in the US as he was in the Philippines. So that part of it, her life was better. Unfortunately, she still he still wasn't any better in terms of emotional support as somebody to talk to. I mean, when she was done with school and she decided to follow her brother into um, into the military, into the Navy, because he had already gone, they they basically told her that she couldn't come back to live at the house if anything happened. When she finally got up the gumption to talk to them or on Facebook about all the abuse that she suffered as a kid, the response of the father was good luck. And Ethan, they went back and forth as what does good luck mean? She's poured herself out to say, basically, I can't believe that I went through all this pain and suffering at your hands and blah blah blah. It's really scarred me emotionally. And the response is good luck. So now, of course, that she has gained TikTok fame and her musical career is just beginning, now her adoptive mother and her adoptive father, they are reaching out to her, at least just the adoptive mother, and saying like, they miss her and that the father misses her. And of course, she believes that it's just because of money. As Ethan asked her that. But anyway, she mentioned her experiences in the Navy and how, as opposed to everybody else, her life began in the Navy, and everybody else was so, as most other people would be, they would find the military restrictive. She found it freeing because now she already was in the habit of asking for a drink of water to do every single thing. Now when she asked people for permission to do things, they would be like, you don't have to ask me for permission to do that. And when she told people, like in the military, that was her first experience with a therapist. And when she told the therapist her story, of course, everybody is shocked and they're like, they feel so empathetic for her and sympathetic to the situation. Um, yeah, it's just, and then she went into the fact that unfortunately, I guess she did not leave everything behind in the Philippines. And she did try to commit suicide while she was in the Navy. And as a result of that, when her time was up, they told her not to re-enlist and to take a break. Um, she didn't have any place to go, so she went to, well, I think she was stationed in Hawaii for the last year of her enlistment. So she just stayed there with friends. And while she was staying with friends, she eventually started making um, TikTok videos. And she, I guess, like everybody else who might start, she only saw, she thought that if it was a million, that was a viral hit. But anything less than a million, no. So I guess she tried a couple times. The first time in a couple of hours, her TikTok was not a hit. Maybe she got 100 views, and so she deleted that one. She did another TikTok where she got like maybe 10,000 views or likes, and she deleted that one because it wasn't enough. And then she finally created the viral TikTok. I think M to the B, and she said like it took her hours to do it. Like maybe it was 100 times. She because you look at it and it's such a simple thing, but it's so cute, right? And she's basically lets you in on the trick, which is that she was shouting at her roommates that she was trying to do this thing. And she was trying and trying, and like she said, maybe 100 times she tried. And I guess you have to cock, well, she had to cock the camera at exactly the right time in the right direction according to how she turned her head and everything. So, yeah. And she talked about how after the success of her TikTok, people reached out to her, and she loved the current management team that she has, and they were the only ones who were willing to have a conversation with her without her signing um, signing um, something, signing with the company beforehand. And they even flew her out to the States, to not San Francisco, but whichever part of California it was. And she was only supposed to stay for about 2 weeks. And it's been 8 months, she said. It's just, it was a whole marvelous, amazing hour and a half listening to her. And her music video, one of the people commented in the reactions, oh, it's 3 minutes. And they were saying, well, I guess most videos are eventually going to end up being 3 minutes. And I think, wow, her story is amazing. She doesn't hurt your eyes to look at her face. And her music video, she is a legitimate singer. She actually has all of this background in singing for years. As she was telling a story where they asked in boot camp, I guess, like, who's a soprano? And nobody knew what a soprano was. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm a soprano. And she puts up her hand. So she gets to be in the people who perform when they graduate. It's, wow. I don't think it was a badly spent hour and a half listening. Well, it probably wasn't an hour and a half because, I'm listening to it at double speed. So maybe it was just 45 minutes. Maybe it was an hour. But it was fun listening to what she has overcome to be where she is and be this. And it's not to say, people say overnight success. She is literally what people envision when they're thinking it's an overnight success, because Ethan is saying that he and Hila, it took them 5 years to fully grasp, how the podcast had changed their lives and everything, being a YouTuber. And here it was that, you know, in 2000, at the beginning of 2000, it was the first time that she started being a part of TikTok. And she filmed a music video, I guess, in December, and it came out in May. Um, I guess she said that they were filming over October, November, December. So it's just really interesting to listen to that. And you look at her face and you think, there's no way that she's gone through all this stuff. But then she has. Um, wow. It reminds me of when I was listening to what Billie Eilish had done, how she came up. But at the same time, she's a little bit older than Billie Eilish now, and it's not taken her quite so long to get to a similar place. It's not the same yet, because she's gonna go on tour this year, as a matter of fact. And they were like, with one song. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. This was great. I like listening to that podcast. Have a good one. Peace.